Living in a state of worship. Worship is often thought of as something we do only during prayer, in a place of worship, or at special moments of devotion. But true worship is far deeper than a single act or a scheduled routine. Living in a state of worship means making every part of life an offering to God: our thoughts, words, actions, work, relationships, and even our private moments. It is a way of living with constant awareness of the Creator, seeking to please Him in everything we do. What does it mean to live in worship? To live in a state of worship means that worship is not limited to rituals alone. It becomes a lifestyle. Every action done with sincerity, gratitude, and obedience to God can become an act of worship. This includes prayer, charity, kindness, honesty, patience, helping others, and fulfilling our responsibilities with the right intention. When the heart is connected to God, even ordinary tasks can carry spiritual value. Eating with gratitude, working honestly, speaking gently, caring for family, and serving the community all become meaningful when done for the sake of pleasing Him. Worship begins in the heart. The foundation of worship is not merely external actions, it begins within the heart. A heart filled with faith, humility, gratitude, and love for God naturally produces a life of worship. When a person remembers that God sees every intention and knows every thought, they become more careful in how they live. A worshipful heart is one that trusts God in times of uncertainty, remains thankful in times of blessing, stays patient in times of hardship, seeks forgiveness after mistakes, desires to obey rather than rebel. This inner awareness transforms life. It shifts our focus from pleasing people to pleasing the One who created us. Worship beyond rituals. Ritual acts of worship such as prayer, fasting, charity, and remembrance are essential. They nourish the soul and strengthen our relationship with God. However, the beauty of faith is that worship extends beyond these sacred practices into daily living. For example, work becomes worship when done honestly and responsibly. Family life becomes worship when filled with love, mercy, and patience. Helping others becomes worship when done sincerely without expecting praise. Seeking knowledge becomes worship when it benefits oneself and others. Avoiding wrongdoing becomes worship when it is done out of reverence for God. This understanding gives life a higher purpose. Nothing becomes meaningless when it is connected to God. The power of intention. One of the most powerful ways to live in a state of worship is through intention. The same action can be ordinary or deeply spiritual depending on why it is done. A person may go to work simply to earn money, or they may work with the intention of providing lawfully for their family, avoiding dependence on others, and being a responsible servant of God. The action is the same, but the intention elevates it into worship. Likewise, cooking for loved ones, studying, exercising, cleaning, or even resting can become worship when done with a pure purpose and in balance. Good intention turns everyday life into a path of nearness to God. Constant remembrance of God. Living in worship requires remembering God regularly. A forgetful heart drifts easily toward heedlessness, while a remembering heart stays grounded and spiritually alive. Remembrance of God can happen through prayer and supplication, reading and reflecting on sacred words, gratitude for blessings, seeking forgiveness often, pausing before decisions and asking what pleases God, quiet moments of reflection throughout the day. When a person remembers God frequently, they begin to see life differently. They become more mindful of their behavior, more careful with their speech, and more peaceful in their heart. Worship in character and conduct. A true state of worship is reflected in character. It is not enough to perform outward acts while neglecting how we treat people. Worship should soften the heart and refine behavior. A worshipful life is marked by honesty, compassion, humility, patience, forgiveness, justice, self-control, respect for others. If worship does not improve our character, then it has not yet reached its full purpose. The goal of devotion is not just performance, but transformation. Worship during hardship. It is easy to worship in times of ease, but living in a state of worship also means turning to God during trials. Hardship can become a powerful form of worship when met with patience, trust, and perseverance. When we face pain, disappointment, delay, or uncertainty, we can still worship by remaining patient instead of becoming bitter, trusting God's wisdom instead of losing hope, continuing to pray even when answers seem delayed, guarding our words from complaint and negativity, seeking strength through faith rather than despair. Trials often reveal the sincerity of our worship. In hardship, the heart learns surrender, guarding against spiritual inconsistency. Many people experience moments of strong faith followed by periods of neglect. Living in a state of worship means striving for consistency rather than intensity alone. Small, sincere acts done regularly are often more powerful than occasional bursts of devotion. To stay spiritually steady, keep daily prayers and devotions consistent. Make time for reflection every day. Start and end the day with remembrance of God. Avoid habits that harden the heart. Stay in the company of righteous and uplifting people. Renew your intention often. Consistency builds a life that remains connected to God even in busy seasons. Worship in serving others. One of the most beautiful forms of worship is serving creation for the sake of the Creator. Acts of kindness are not small in the sight of God. A comforting word, a helping hand, a charitable gift, or simply listening to someone in pain can all be acts of worship. Serving others teaches us that worship is not only about what happens between us and God privately, but also how our faith benefits the people around us. A truly worshipful life leaves traces of goodness wherever it goes. The blessings of living in worship. When a person lives in a state of worship, many blessings begin to appear in their life. Inner peace because the heart stays connected to God. Purpose because daily life gains spiritual meaning. Discipline because actions become guided by higher values. Gratitude because blessings are recognized more deeply. Strength because faith becomes a source of resilience. Hope because the soul trusts in God's mercy and wisdom. Such a life is not free from challenges, but it is full of direction, meaning, and spiritual richness. Conclusion. Living in a state of worship is not about spending every moment in formal rituals. It is about carrying the awareness of God into every moment of life. It means turning routine actions into sacred offerings through sincere intention, obedience, remembrance, and good character. When worship becomes a way of life, the ordinary becomes meaningful, the difficult becomes bearable, and the heart becomes deeply anchored in faith. Every day becomes an opportunity to draw closer to God not only in prayer, but in work, service, patience, gratitude, and love. A life of worship is ultimately a life of purpose. It is a life lived with the constant desire to honor the one who gave us life itself.